What is up, people? Van from the VaniverseGaming channel here, bringing you another video on Solasta Crown the Magister. Today's video, we're going to cover all the first level spells available in Solasta. We're going to explain which ones are solely in Solasta and not part of the 5th edition D&D rule set, the SRD. I'm going to give you my opinion of each of them as we give a description. I'll tell you whether I think this is a fantastic spell, situational, or if it's a terrible spell. And we will start with the wizard class because they have most of the arcane spells, and then we'll look at the spells provided more divine like clerics, and then we'll get into the spells that are only for specific classes like druid only, ranger only, paladin only. So there are 37 spells to get through here, so let's get started. Alright, so we're going to start off with Burning Hands. So Burning Hands to me is a fantastic spell. It's an AoE that does 3d6 fire damage, half on a dexterity saving throw. It sucks that it's a dex saving throw because a lot of people have a high dex, so there's a good chance they're going to take half damage. But hitting 3 targets for 3d6 damage or more, depending, it's just a really good spell to have. I would pick this up most of the time. Charm Person, this is a terrible spell in Solasta, so it's more of an RP thing. I don't like using it in Solasta. I think it's a waste of a spell slot compared to the other level 1 spells, so I just wouldn't pick this up. In regular 5th edition D&D, this thing has some pretty good uses, but in a video game, I just think it's worthless. Color Spray. So this functions pretty interesting. There is no saving throw. So basically what you do is you cast a cone similar to Burning Hands. It's a 15-foot cone, and then you roll 60-10. So let's just say you roll all 10s and you roll 60, then 60 hit points worth of creatures, starting with the lowest and working its way up, are now blinded. Now, it's great because there's no saving throw, but as you get to higher levels, it's not going to have the same effect unless you're doing damage to them. So just keep that in mind. At low levels, when things have 10 hit points, 12 hit points, and you roll 40, I mean, you could get 3 or 4 targets blinded, but you know, when you get to a higher level, you're going to be fighting things with way higher hit points. You're going to have to do some significant damage to them before you could blind them with a level 1 spell slot. Now, as you get higher, you can gain 2 additional dice for every level. So if I were to cast this at the next level up, it'd be 8d6, or I'm sorry, 8d10. But I feel like there's better uses. This is a very situational spell. It could really help you, or maybe not, but this is not a must-have spell in my book. Comprehend Languages. So this is one where if you want to be able to do everything in the game and know every language, this is great to have. As a wizard, you don't have to memorize or prepare ritual spells. So as long as this is in your spell book, you can always use it. So as a wizard, I would just pick it up to have it, just in case. But as any other class, because you have to prepare it and use one of those prepared spell slots, I wouldn't necessarily keep this. So situational, terrible for most, pretty situational for wizards. Detect Magic, this is a must-have in my book. It's fantastic. Again, as a wizard, you just keep this in your spell book. And every once in a while, just do a ritual cast to see what is in your bags that is magical. It will put a little like shimmer on it, and it'll put a question mark in the top right-hand corner, and that's how you know it's a magical item. And then you can also keep Identify as a ritual spell, which we'll get to here in a second. Expeditious Retreat. This is a situational spell to me. I don't think it's terrible. It allows you to use your bonus action to cast Dash, which allows you to move at your speed away from something as a bonus action. I think for a wizard, depending on how you play, it's probably not a great spell. It's probably pretty worthless, and you can only cast it on yourself. But there are some classes in the game that can use wizard spells, like the Arcane Fighter class. I forget what the name of the subclass is, but I use it all the time because I want to close the gap, and it provides amazing mobility. But for a wizard, this is very situational, maybe even closer to terrible. All right, False Life. So again, if you're not going to pick up the feat that allows you to wear light or medium armor, then having the additional hit points is always going to be helpful, because you know, at low levels you get 1d4 plus 4 temporary hit points. If you were level 1 you get 6 hit points plus your con. So with this guy, it would be 9 hit points. So getting an additional 1d4 plus 4 hit points, depending on the difficulty that you're playing on, if you're playing on some of the harder difficulties, you can easily get one-shotted. So low levels, nice spell, and then every slot above, it only gives you 5 temporary hit points. There's just better subclasses and feats you can take and backgrounds that will just make this worthless. But if you want to play a traditional wizard, this could be a situational help. Featherfall, that's just terrible in this game. Similar to Charm Person, great in 5th edition tabletop, terrible in a video game like this, in my opinion. Fog Cloud. Fog Cloud's pretty cool. You basically put this giant 20-foot cube or sphere around something, and they are now in the fog. So if they're in the fog, they actually have disadvantage on all their attack rolls against you, and you have advantage on all your attack rolls against them. And so it's really nice if you want to, throw it down on a group of enemies, pelt them with ranged attacks where you're getting advantage and they're having disadvantage. So situational, not a must-have, but it can be effective depending on the certain fights. Same with Grease. Grease is basically a 10-foot little area that you throw grease down, and then once you throw the grease down, anything that walks onto it is going to have to roll a dexterity saving throw or slip and fall prone. It also slows them down a little bit, but having the ability to make things fall prone is a very situational spell. It could be very beneficial if you have a lot of melee damage dealers, so they fall prone at their feet, and then now they get advantage on all their attacks. But if you have a lot of ranged attacks, it's actually going to give all your ranged people disadvantage. So it's very situational depending on your party and the usage. Same goes for Hideous Laughter. This is one where you tell a terrible joke, something fails a wisdom saving throw, and then they fall down on the ground laughing. So they are now prone. They cannot take actions or reactions. So it's a really nice way to take a creature out of the fight. And then every turn they get to roll a wisdom saving throw to see if they break out of it. So depending on your rolls and what the fight looks like, you could easily get somebody down on the ground pretty quickly and start making some advantage attacks on them. But situational, not terrible. Identify. So this is one where I think is a fantastic must-have for a wizard. Like I said, wizard is the only class that does not need to have their ritual spells prepared. As long as it's in their book, they can cast it. So when I play through Solasta, 99% of the time I run with a wizard, solely because I don't want to waste money on detect magic and identify, and I don't want to have to prepare, detect, or identify in my spells because I want to be able to have those for other spells. So this is a must-have if you're going to run a wizard. In my opinion, it's just going to save you time, money. It's going to make it really easy to identify your magic items. Jump. So this spell actually in Solasta has a lot of use. In 5th edition tabletop, I don't think it has tons of use. But in this game, there are specific areas that you cannot get to unless you have an extremely high strength, which gets your athletics proficiency really high, or if you use the jump spell. So this is a very situational spell, but I think in Solasta, just how the game is built, this is actually a must-have if you want to get through certain parts of the game earlier and not have to come back later. Longstrider. Longstrider is kind of similar to like an Expeditious Retreat, but it lasts for an hour and it grants you 2 additional cells. So you grant you 10 additional feet of movement. And then if you upcast it, you can give that 10 additional feet of movement to other players. As a wizard, I just don't think this is worth a spell slot. There's other classes that get this as well that might benefit them. But for me, this is a terrible spell on a wizard. It's just a waste of a spell slot. Mage Armor. So Mage Armor is, to me, a lot like False Life. If you don't pick up the feat that grants you the ability to wear light or medium armor, then Mage Armor is going to be a great spell, right? It's going to set your base AC to 13, and then you're going to take your dex into consideration. So with this wizard, it would give me a 15 AC. Normally, my armor would be robes, right? So I'd have a 10 AC plus 2, so I'd have 12. So it definitely gives me more AC, and it lasts for 8 hours, which is really nice. So if you're not going to cheat, quote unquote, and use the background that gives you medium armor, then this is a must-have spell. Otherwise, it's a terrible spell because there are other ways in this game to get better armor as a wizard than to waste a spell slot on Mage Armor. Magic Missile. What can I say? This is by far the bread and butter level 1 spell that everyone knows and loves, and it does not disappoint. Basically, you can target up to 3 targets, or you can target 1 target with 3 different bolts. They do 1d4 plus 1 force damage, and they're guaranteed to hit. The only time that they miss is if someone uses the shield spell, and there are creatures in this game that are casters that will shield. Other than that, you're guaranteed to hit. So having the ability to throw 3d4 plus 3 at 1 target or 1d4 plus 1 at 3 different targets that are guaranteed to hit is just a great way to guarantee that you're going to finish off a creature. And then as you upcast it, you can gain additional missiles. So if you upcast it 2-3 levels, you get 4, 5, 6 magic missiles that are guaranteed to hit. So there are just some times when you need to finish something off, and Magic Missile is by far the best way to do that. All right, next one, Protection versus Evil and Good. So this one, aberrations, celestials, animals, fays, fiends, and undead have disadvantage attacks. The target cannot charm, blah, blah, blah. Honestly, this is a waste of a spell to me. I know it lasts 10 minutes and all that. I don't think it's worth a spell slot. This is a terrible spell in my book, both in 5th edition, tabletop, and in this game. All right, Shield. Again, another bread and butter spell for a wizard, right? To be able to use your reaction to grant yourself 5 AC until the start of your next turn is just amazing how good this is. So this is a must-have. I will say be careful on using other reactions, right? You can only do 1 reaction per round. So if you waste your reaction on something else and then someone is about to hit you, you can't use your shield spell. So I highly recommend keeping your reaction on your wizard for the shield spell solely because of the utility it provides. If you do choose the background that gives you medium armor and you do have a very high dexterity and then you have the shield spell and you're wearing a shield based on a certain subclass, I mean, you can get an AC better than a fighter. You can get up into 20, 21, and then with your shield spell 25 AC. It's pretty broken and ridiculous. Great spell. Sleep. Sleep is a lot like Color Spray. There is no roll that requires a save. You roll 5d8, and targets within a 20-foot sphere have to fall asleep. There is no save, nothing. So it just looks at their hit points, and as long as your hit points that you roll, it's going to find the lowest hit point creature, and if you rolled higher than their hit points, they will fall asleep. Sleep is a fantastic spell, because sleep actually makes them in the condition which is pretty much unconscious. So every attack against a target that is slept and every melee attack will be considered a automatic crit if you do hit them. So it's a great spell. Similar to Color Spray, it does fall off the higher level you get. There are better spells that will work, but I love the sleep spell. Especially if you're able to do some damage to multiple targets, then you can sleep all of them and then just go up to them with your melee and just crit them all and kill them versus trying to fight them all the other way. So I think I would say situational must-have. I think I teeter. I really like this spell, but it's also can be situational depending on how you're playing the game. And then finally, Thunderwave. Thunderwave is a lot like Burning Hands. It's a little bit different in its cone shape and how that it actually functions, but basically it's an AoE. It does 2d8 thunder damage, half if they save. If they fail, they actually get pushed back 2 spots. If they save, they don't get pushed back. So 2d8 damage with a potential pushback, kind of nice, versus the 3d6 damage, which you get over here. So they're very similar in spell. It's just that Thunderwave pushes back. So the only benefit to Thunderwave is that if you can push the creatures back, you can move away without an attack of opportunity being on you. So that is the spells for the Wizard Arcane class. Now let's move over to the Cleric and start looking at some of the Divine spells. And every spell that you see in this list is also available in 5th edition. None of these are Solasta only spells. Okay, moving on to the Cleric spells. So first up we have Bane. Bane is a spell that is pretty situational. I prefer the other option, which is Bless. But what Bane does is every creature has to roll a charisma saving throw. It can affect up to 3 creatures in a 30-foot cube. And if they fail, they get a negative 1d4 to all their attacks and saving throws going forward. Now, this to me is situational or not as good because they can pass a saving throw and you could have no effect on the enemy. So instead of using this one, I would prefer Bless, which to me is a must-have, where you pick 3 targets in your party and you give them +1 to their attacks and their saving throws. To me, this is better because it's guaranteed to work. It doesn't have to roll a saving throw. And I just think that you're going to get more miles out of a Bless than you are out of a Bane. Now, there are going to be situations where Bane's a better choice, but I think Bless is a must-have because regardless of the situation, giving all your party a 1d4 to your attacks and saving throws is great. So you can only do 3 targets at level 1, but if you upcast to level 2, then you'll be able to hit all 4 targets in your party with the Bless spell. It is concentration, so you got to be careful. If you get hit too many times, it might knock your Bless spell off, so keep that in mind. Coming in next is Cure Wounds. This is to me, this is situational. I think that there are other healing spells, which we'll get into here, that is much better in combat for picking up your allies that go unconscious. I don't think I would use Cure Wounds all that often because out of combat, there are better spells to heal your characters. So to me, I think most people are going to pick this up just because, but honestly, I think it's situational or even maybe terrible to waste the spell slot on Cure Wounds, which some people might find strange. Detect Evil and Good, we already covered. Detect Magic, we already covered. Guiding Bolt. So this spell is phenomenal. It is a level 1 spell that if it were to hit the target, it's an attack spell, you do 46 radiant damage, and the next attack on this creature is going to have advantage. And it also is like a light source. It puts a dim light around the creature that is hit with it, which is also very nice if you have creatures that have issues with dark vision, etc. So just a super strong spell. I always want to say, hey, let's bless me first, or let's find a way to increase my ability to hit so that I'm not wasting this spell because it is a level 1 spell slot. But man, when this thing hits, it just devastates things. All right, so Healing Word. So this is the must-have along with Guiding Bolt in my opinion. Healing Word is a bonus action that you do 1d4 plus your ability healing, so 1d4 plus 4 at this point, to a target within 12 plus 5, so 60 feet, right? So this is a ranged heal where Cure Wounds is a touch. So ultimately, if you're going to use your heals in combat to pick up characters so they don't go unconscious, Healing Word is better than Cure Wounds. If you want to get them up and make sure they don't go back down again, then maybe you want to walk up and use Cure Wounds. I feel like Healing Word is a much better option, and it's a must-have. Inflict Wounds. This is very similar to Guiding Bolt. It does a crap ton of damage at level 1. It is a melee touch, so you have to roll an attack roll and be in melee range. But if you do hit, it does 3d10 necrotic damage, and as you upcast it, it goes up by 1 die. So similar to Guiding Bolt, if you are blessed or you have an ability to get advantage on your attacks and you're pretty sure you're gonna have a good chance of hitting, using Inflict Wounds will decimate even some of the strongest creatures even at lower levels and as you skill up. So to me, this is situational depending on how you play, if you like melee or range as a cleric. But if you are a melee bound cleric, this thing does some significant damage. Again, we've already talked about Protection, Good and Evil, not a good spell. And then once we get to the final one, which is Shield of Faith. So this is another concentration spell that gives you 2 AC for a limited time to your allies. 1 ally, 10 minutes, 2 AC, bonus action. To me, this is a waste of a concentration spell. You can do so much more with your concentration, like Bless, that I don't think this is a good spell for a cleric, so I would not pick this up. All right, so that covers the cleric-based spells. Let's get into the druid spells at level 1. We're starting off with Animal Friendship. So very similar to Charm Person, Animal Friendship to me is another one of those spells that just isn't a great spell. It becomes charmed by you, and until anyone harms it, it just kind of sits there, right? It's a waste of a spell in my opinion. I don't recommend it. It does say it lasts for 24 hours, and it's like a charmed animal, so it can follow you around and stuff. I've never used it in Solasta, so if other people have had better success with it, it just, to me, was always a waste of a spell slot. So Charmed Person we covered, Cure Wounds, Detect Magic. So Detect Poison and Disease is the next one that is a Druid-only spell. This basically allows you, for the duration, you can sense poisonous creatures and diseases within 6 cells. So it lets you know when things are going to be poisonous or when objects are diseased, etc. Again, waste of a spell in Solasta. It could be very beneficial in tabletop version of the game. Entangle. This is a situational spell. I think that it has its purpose. So the target is up to 4 targets in an 18 by 5. So what is that, like 90-foot range? They have to roll a strength saving throw. If they fail their strength saving throw, they are restrained. They cannot move. If they cannot move, they have disadvantage when they're being attacked or disadvantage on attack against other creatures. And it also slows down their movement. So depending on how you're being, what creatures are after you, your melee, your ranged, it's situational, but it can have a very big impact on the battle. Just keep in mind that this also affects your party as well. Fairy Fire. So this is another really good spell. You have up to 4 targets in a 60-foot area. They have to roll a dexterity saving throw, and if they fail, they're kind of lit up. So they can't go invisible anymore, and all attacks have advantage against them going forward. So it's really nice it's almost like a bless spell where if they do fail, then you get advantage on all your attacks against them. But because it's a dexterity saving throw, a lot of times they pass, so it might be better to use another spell, because you could waste a spell slot and maybe cast this on 3 or 4 creatures, but only hit 1 of the 3 or 4 because they passed their save. So keep that in mind. I think this is situational. There are times where this is nice, but I don't think this is a must-have for a Druid. We already talked about Fall of Cloud, Goodberry. Okay, so Goodberry to me is a must-have spell in Solasta Crown of the Magister. You need 4 units of food in order to take a long rest in this game. Rations weigh a lot, so until you can get bags of holding or haversacks or anything that lowers your weight, you want to definitely not carry around a whole bunch of rations, right? So my opinion is to use Goodberry, just have a spell slot available so that every time you're ending and you find a long rest, you just cast Goodberry quick, and that's going to give you the nourishment to take a long rest. Even outside of combat, if you want to just use a spell outside of combat, you can easily give somebody 10 hit points because they're a hit point each per berry. But that's up to you. I really use it for the long rest mechanic in Solasta. We already covered the rest of these, so that covers spells that are specific to the Druid. Finally, let's get into spells that are specific to the Ranger, and then last, the Paladin. All right, on to the Ranger. So the Ranger and the Druid have very similar spell choices. The one spell that the Ranger gets that the Druid does not is Hunter's Mark. This is a must-have for every single Ranger who plays the game. It is a concentration spell, so keep that in mind. But as a bonus action, you put a mark on a target, and that target receives 1d6 damage when hit. So every time you hit it with an ability, with a bow attack, a melee attack, whatever, you do an additional 1d6 damage. So once you kill the creature, you can then use your bonus action within an hour to move it to another creature. And then as you upcast it, the duration lasts. So you could cast this in one fight and then play the game for a little bit, get into another fight, and then start off the combat with a bonus action Hunter's Mark and not have to waste a spell slot. So it's just a must-have for a Ranger to be able to mark something as a bonus action to do additional damage to it, and then within an hour's time, be able to use it again without wasting another spell slot, or if you upcast it, 8 hours or 24 hours, depending on what level spell slot you use. It is worth noting that Rangers don't get spells until level 2, so keep that in mind. These are level 1 spells. All the other characters we kind of talked about got them at level 1. When you get to the Ranger and the Paladin, they don't start getting their spells until level 2. Alright, so finally, let's get to the Paladin. Alright, so we have our Paladin here. So similar as the Ranger and Druid are very similar in spell choices, so are the Paladin and Cleric. But there are actually 2 spells that a Paladin gets that the Cleric does not. They're Paladin only. And the first one is Divine Favor. So Divine Favor, as a bonus action, grants additional radiant damage for a limited time to your attacks. It is a concentration spell, so keep that in mind. But once you cast it, you do an additional 1d4 radiant damage on all of your attacks. This is a must-have in my opinion if you're going to play a Paladin. This is very similar to the Hunter's Mark of the Ranger, where you're gaining additional damage on all of your attacks. But just keep in mind, it does require concentration, and if you're a Paladin that's in the mix, and you have a terrible constitution, which shouldn't be the case, but even so, there's a chance you could fail your concentration saving throw and then drop this. So you could cast it, get one attack in, and then lose it the next turn, so just keep that in mind. And then the other one that is also only Paladin is Heroism. So Heroism allows you to grant another target the ability to not be frightened and give them a temporary hit point. So it's your ability score. So if you have, for Paladins, we use Charisma. So let's just say your Charisma is 20 and it's a +5. You can grant another ally 5 temporary hit points and make them immune to Frighten. This is a decent spell. It's touch. It lasts for 1 minute. I would not use it. I think this is situational and maybe even terrible, solely because Paladins like to save their spell slots for their Divine Smites. So I would not use this on Heroism. I would save my spell slots for Divine Smite and Divine Favor. Okay, so that covers all of the level 1 spells that are available in Solasta Crown of the Magister. If you guys have any issues with some of the comments I made, or you think that I didn't give spells the right light, or you've used them in Solasta and you've had a better reaction using them, just leave it in the comments below. If you like these videos and you want to see more, just go ahead and sub to the channel, click on the little bell for the notification, and then if you like the video, just give us a like here. So this is Van from the VaniverseGaming channel. Appreciate you guys watching. Stay tuned. We will have another video up going into the 2nd level spells. Peace, and see you later.